Central Italy shaken by a spate of strong earthquakes on Wednesday. Unnerving residents still rattled by last year's deadly tremors. No reports of injuries or serious damage. Hundreds of schools forced to close. Evacuated students huddling together outside for support. The underground metro in Rome also suspended as a precaution. The capital city not accustomed to earthquakes. Many residents fleeing shaking buildings in fear. The three strongest earthquakes measuring 5.3, 5.7 and 5.3 on the Richter scale, all striking within about an hour. Their epicentre roughly 7 kilometres from the town of Amatrice, which was flattened by a powerful tremor last August. The August 24th earthquake killed more than 300 people and destroyed thousands of homes and businesses. More than 45,000 aftershocks have since struck the region, a constant reminder to Italians of their precarious position straddling two tectonic plates.
Straight to some breaking news coming to us now from Italy. At least 30 people have been found dead at a hotel that was destroyed by an avalanche. It happened after an earthquake hit the area. However, when this does happen in winter, snow buildup can threaten avalanches. We've been hearing about a few occurring, and it's just now being realized that dozens have actually died in one of these avalanches in central Italy.
A giant crack in an Antarctic ice shelf forces a group of researchers to evacuate a polar research base. The British Antarctic Society is bringing home a group of almost 90 scientists from the Halley 6 Polar Research Base. A crack in the Brunt ice shelf has been growing about 1 mile every year since 2012 and passes just 10 miles from the base. The crack in the ice is already a third of a mile deep and as wide as 25 highway lanes. Officials are worried that an iceberg could break away from the larger ice shelf, although the chances of this happening are low and the evacuation of the base is a precautionary measure. Researchers have been removed from the base ahead of the Antarctic winter, which brings on 24-hour darkness, extreme cold and freezing ocean waters, all conditions that would make rescue efforts nearly impossible.
The geography of the Louisiana coastline is quickly changing. A state commissioned report predicts rising water could swallow more land.
Louisiana loses on average a football field worth of land every hour. And that affects just about every way of life you can imagine down here. Businesses, homes, tourism, cultural history, all of it is protected by the islands and estuaries that, as we saw, are rapidly going away.
If you want to see what's happening to the coast of Louisiana, it's hard to find a better spot than Adams Bay, about 50 miles southeast of New Orleans. Brian Ostahowski is an archaeologist with the Louisiana Archaeological Society. He showed us Lemon Tree Island, inhabited from prehistoric times through the 1800s. Pieces of pottery, glass, and other ancient artifacts are everywhere, but not for long.
We're not doing excavations out here. We're doing like emergency documentation. Within the next 2 years, all these sites are going to be gone.
Ostahowski says rising sea levels and commercial development have led to erosion threatening not just Lemon Tree Island, but much of the coast. A new master plan released by the Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority shows what's happened to Louisiana over the past 85 years. From 1932 to 2010, Louisiana lost 1,900 square miles, an area the size of Delaware. Another map shows what may be lost over the next 50 years from erosion, if nothing is done. It's not just artifacts that'll be washed away.
Coastal communities that are really important to the offshore oil and gas industry essentially become islands out there in the middle of nowhere, in the Gulf of Mexico, essentially. That means storm surge comes further in, water levels are deeper. That means coastal communities are flooded. This has real impacts for people.
Baby comes into this world unlike any other baby has before. For the first time, doctors in Ukraine used a new type of three-parent IVF technique so that a previously infertile couple could have a child. To clarify, this isn't the first child born with DNA of three parents, but she was the first to be conceived using a technique called pronuclear transfer. In this instance, doctors in Kiev combined the father's sperm with the mother's egg and then placed those genes into an egg that was donated by another woman. Then they implanted that egg
in the mother's womb, and on January 5th, she gave birth naturally to a baby girl. The baby has her parents' genetic identity with a trace amount of DNA from the donor woman. But her conception is controversial. For one, the science of three-parent IVF is new and still highly experimental. It also raises a number of ethical concerns and fears over the possibility of a future with so-called designer babies.
Almost two-thirds of the primate species on Earth are extremely close to extinction, and most of them got that way because of humans either killing them or killing their habitats. The researchers who discovered this are asking the public to make it a priority to save primate species. They wrote, "Primate conservation is not yet a lost cause. We have one last opportunity to greatly reduce or even eliminate the human threats to primates and their habitats."
On Wednesday, the city of Denver, Colorado, reportedly started working on becoming the first city in the U.S. to allow public marijuana use in places such as coffee shops, yoga studios, and art galleries. Even though voters approved the social use measure last November, the ballot proposal failed to spell out any rules for how marijuana could be used in public, beyond saying that it can't be smoked inside and that patrons must be 21 to use it. According to state legislators, Colorado's Liquor Control Board already has decreed that no businesses with a liquor license can allow marijuana use. This means that the bill has been regulated to restaurants that don't serve alcohol and other event spaces in the city.
This week, DCMJ, an advocacy organization that helped pass the marijuana legalization law in Washington, D.C., plans to pass out at least 4,200 marijuana joints near DuPont Circle on January 20th during Donald Trump's presidential inauguration. Adam Eidinger, the group's leader and a longtime D.C. activist, told NBC News that the group started planning the joint protest as soon as Trump announced Jeff Sessions as his pick for Attorney General. Eidinger added that the group is worried that Trump's incoming administration will roll back recent marijuana legalization laws that were passed across the country.
President Obama covered a lot in his final press conference as commander-in-chief.
Commuting her sentence was entirely appropriate. It is in America's interest and the world's interest that we have a constructive relationship with Russia. We cannot force the parties to arrive at peace.
And as the country looks ahead to the next administration, Obama talked about what worries him going forward.
I worry about inequality because I think that if we are not investing in making sure everybody plays a role in this economy, the economy will not grow as fast, and I think it will also lead to further and further separation between us as Americans. We are the only country in the advanced world that makes it harder to vote rather than easier. This whole notion of election or voting fraud, this is something that has constantly been disproved. This is fake news.
Joe Biden calls Russia the biggest threat to international order. Biden, speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, in his final major speech as vice president, issued a warning to the world that Russia might try to influence a series of elections in Europe this year. He noted that Russia might use tactics like online propaganda and cyber attacks to try to cause the collapse of the international liberal order.
With many countries in Europe slated to hold elections this year, we should expect further attempts by Russia to meddle in the democratic process. It will occur again, I promise you. And again, the purpose is clear: to collapse the liberal international order.
Wednesday, the Russian government announced that Edward Snowden, the U.S. intelligence contractor turned whistleblower, can stay in the country for another 3 years. The original asylum stay for Snowden, who arrived in Russia in 2013 after disclosing evidence of mass surveillance by the U.S. and U.K., was set to expire this year. Since leaving the U.S., Snowden has been charged with espionage and theft of government property after he leaked secret materials he discovered while working for the National Security Agency. Despite a recent petition, he is not expected to be pardoned by outgoing President Barack Obama.
We start with breaking news. Russia and Turkey have carried out joint airstrikes on Daesh positions in the Syrian province of Aleppo. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, fighter jets from the two countries carried out their first joint operation on the outskirts of the town of Al-Bab. The ministry says the strikes have so far been highly effective. The Turkish military has been backing a ground offensive by Free Syrian army fighters to retake the town from Daesh.
What do you make of these airstrikes? How effective are they going to be? And do you believe they're going to be intensified?
They could be intensified. I think they are going to be effective. And it also politically represents an interesting combination of having Turkey and Russia together, working together, going directly after ISIS. Now, this contradicts a little bit what the State Department has been saying, that Russia is not looking to go after ISIS, but in fact it is. But it also reflects something else that's very interesting. This is the first time that a NATO member has actually worked with Russia to go after terrorists.
The territory's changing. I
Yes,
mean, the
very much so.
landscape of allies and cooperation is...
On Wednesday, Vice President-elect Mike Pence said that NATO will keep the same position it has now on Russia under the Trump administration. The comments come just a few days after President-elect Donald Trump said NATO was obsolete. When pressed on whether the organization will remain a counterweight to Russia during an interview with NBC's Chuck Todd, Pence said that historic mission of NATO will go forward. I'm confident. Pence, however, went on to defend some of Trump's criticisms of the alliance, saying NATO needs to refocus its mission on confronting radical Islamic terrorism, the threat of ISIS, and the threat that poses to member nations.
When President-elect Donald Trump and Vice President-elect Mike Pence take the oath of office, they'll do so with a nod to President Abraham Lincoln and President Ronald Reagan. Trump will place his hand on the Lincoln Bible.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
Just as President Obama did for his 2009 and 2013 swearing-in ceremonies. Trump will also take the oath using the Bible his mother gave him in 1955. The Reagan Foundation will loan President Reagan's family Bible to Pence. That Bible hasn't been used in an inauguration since Reagan's.
Vice President-elect Mike Pence and Ronald Reagan share Christian conservative values, but it turns out they also share a favorite Bible verse. As CBN's Jenna Browder reported Tuesday, both men like to quote 2 Chronicles 7:14. And the incoming vice president actually retweeted Jenna's tweet about that verse on the campaign trail. Pence referenced the scripture many times without knowing that Reagan also used this verse in his inauguration ceremony. Friday, Pence will use Reagan's family Bible for his own swearing-in ceremony. It will also be open to 2 Chronicles 7:14, which says God will heal the land if his people will pray and humble themselves.
Outgoing U.S. President Barack Obama has warned his successor, Donald Trump, against any sudden and unilateral moves on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
I think my views are clear. We'll see how their approach plays itself out. I don't want to project today what could end up happening, but obviously it's a volatile environment. What we've seen in the past is when sudden unilateral moves are made that speak to some of the core issues and sensitivities of either side, that can be explosive.
Palestinian officials left Moscow ready to unify and form a new government. Hamas and Fatah representatives also agreed. They were tired of the status quo when it comes to international efforts to push forward a two-state solution for Palestinians and Israelis.
We think that Russia can play an important role in the quartet, which has been dominated by the American administration in one way or another.
We stopped all kinds of relations with the quartet, and we don't deal with it as an entity, but we deal with its members.
The Hamas leader is referring to the Middle East Quartet. Russia, the US, the UN, and the EU established it in 2002 to help push forward a peace deal between the Palestinians and Israelis. Hamas has called it a failure. Russia has long played a role in this conflict and has been working to unify the Palestinians. It held another meeting for Palestinian factions in Moscow in 2011. Sponsoring talks like these, playing a game-changing role in the war in Syria. Analysts describe these diplomatic efforts by Russia as a way to increase the scope of its influence in the Middle East and its global stature.
This region could be considered the region of vital interest for Russia. In comparison to the Soviet Union, the role of Moscow is more important and efficient in regulating those conflicts that exist there, especially the Israel-Palestine conflict.
What does this potential unity government mean for Israel?
It could mean a lot of things.
It could mean that Hamas, which is an internationally recognized terror organization, is becoming a little bit more conservative by trying to join with Fatah, President Abbas's Fatah party. It could mean that Fatah is becoming more radical by trying to join up with Hamas. And since the supposed unity government wants to hold elections after, to create a leadership, it could mean a radically different approach to the peace process with Israel, depending on who is chosen.
Wednesday, several Jewish community centers in different U.S. states reportedly received false bomb threats through the phone. This is the second wave of promised attacks to target American Jewish facilities just this month. A series of bomb threats on January 9th targeted 16 Jewish community centers in 9 U.S. states, resulting in no attacks or injuries. While no bombs were ever found, the Federal Bureau of Investigation is alerted to look into the source of the calls. No one has claimed any responsibility for the threats, and the FBI has not named any suspects or described a possible motive for them.
Now, in other news, North Korea is believed to have manufactured 2 additional intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of being fired from mobile launch systems. This is according to sources within South Korea's defense ministry and U.S. intelligence. This latest development comes just a couple of weeks after North Korea said it was capable of firing an ICBM at any time and from anywhere on its leader Kim Jong-un's order. Experts say this could mean a test firing could happen much earlier than previous predictions, which said a missile could be launched sometime in February, before Seoul and Washington hold their annual joint military exercise in March. It's said the new ICBMs are about 15 meters in length, which is shorter than the regime's existing KN-08 or KN-14s. The sources say Pyongyang's decision to unveil its new weaponry can be read as a strategic message for the incoming Trump administration.
At least 50 people have been killed in a suicide bombing targeting militia groups committed to restoring peace in Mali. In a huge blow to long-running efforts to stabilize the troubled north, the car bombing in the city of Gao saw attackers force their way into a military camp, running over people before blowing their vehicle up just as 600 soldiers were assembling. And Al-Qaeda said in a statement that the attack was carried out by North African affiliate Al-Musrabitun. UN Chief Antonio Guterres has condemned the attack, calling for swift action to bring those responsible to justice. In the televised address, Mali's president vowed to fight back, and the nation will observe 3 days of national mourning.
Fleeing Gambia by the thousands. As fears increase, the African country is on the brink of civil war. Gambia's president Yahya Jammeh once vowed to rule for 1 billion years and is doing everything possible to remain in power, despite losing elections last month to opposition leader Adama Barrow.
No election, no military or no foreign power can take me out of office unless Allah says so.
Parliament agreed to extend Jammeh's term by 3 months, just hours before his mandate was set to expire. He even declared a state of emergency. Regional leaders have threatened to use military force to oust Jammeh if he refuses to hand power to Barrow. Amid the uncertainty, thousands of tourists have left the country.
I wasn't worried until now. I thought everything would go smoothly. But now with everybody panicking, I'm beginning to panic myself.
I think I'd rather be home than something terrible happen. By the sounds of it, it'd better going today than tomorrow, because it could be closed down tomorrow, then you don't know what's happening.
Iran anti-aircraft forces opened fire on a drone flying over the capital of Tehran. The drone, known as a quadcopter, entered a no-fly zone on Monday, January 16th. Quadcopters are non-military drones usually used for filming. A city official tells state media, quote, "The drone was flying close to a forbidden zone. An investigation will be started into what institute or organization controlled it." Iran's anti-aircraft forces are the last line of defense in case of an aerial attack. Central Tehran is a no-fly zone, as many government institutions and the office of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei are located in the area. This isn't the first drone shot down by Iran in recent months. In December, Iran shot down a drone being operated by a film crew in central Tehran. The crew was working on a documentary to be aired on state television.
The U.S. Army Research Laboratory and its industry partners demonstrated the flying capabilities of a unique rectangular-shaped quadcopter during a visit by DoD officials. The Joint Tactical Aerial Resupply Vehicle, or JTARV, also known as the hoverbike, could someday make it possible for soldiers on the battlefield to order resupply and then receive the supplies from an autonomous unmanned aerial vehicle. With a payload capacity of up to 300 pounds, the vehicle could provide vital resupply at short distances. Army researchers envision a future JTARV flying low to the ground or at thousands of feet at speeds of 60 miles per hour or more.
Do you need police or paramedics?
That whimpering is coming from Buddy, a German Shepherd service dog. It's the fourth time Buddy has called 911. Officers arrived within 2 minutes to discover Buddy's owner had suffered a seizure.
But he always looks out for me. He does everything from the time I wake up till the time I go to sleep, and sometimes thereafter. If I'm in bed longer than he thinks I should be, he'll come over and nibble on my fingers.
Stallnaker trained Buddy to call for help when he's having a medical emergency. Military injuries cause him to have seizures and blackouts. Stallnaker says man's best friend doesn't go far enough to describe Buddy. He's now hailing him as a hero.